Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a little bit of a follow-up slash kind of update for you guys from the brand Monta. This is of course their Oceanking V2. This thing is gorgeous, and now we actually do have some more variations available. Here you can see my standard model, my personal collection over on the left on the bracelet with the date at the 6 o'clock. But now you actually see the full gilt model with no date on the right, which is absolutely striking, I have to say, and is really making me consider what are my options? Like, is it okay for me to own two of these? How can I possibly rationalize this? But I mean, honestly, it's almost its own watch. It's just that simple, guys. There are watches I own multiple variations of based off like a black dial versus a blue dial versus a white dial. And if, obviously if I could afford to have multiple Monta Oceankings, I think that I might actually need to, because that's how much I really like this variation. And also, the biggest part of this variation is the no date. It's considered the time only model. And as you can see, it just adds an extra layer of symmetry and really ties in to that really beautiful vintage theme without kind of buying into some of those vintage tropes that not a lot of people really get into, i.e. Vintageized loom, patinaed loom. So here you're still going to get everything modern. You're still going to even get a ceramic bezel. So, I mean, it's really fantastic when you think about it. So I'm really looking forward to sharing these with you guys and doing a little bit of a compare and contrast. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. All right, so first off, I actually do have this piece on a beautiful NATO from Monta NATOs. It's obviously vintage Bond-Style, and I think it just ties in beautifully with the no date, the time only aesthetic, as well as the gilt indices and bezel insert. You can see there, this isn't just a flat gold. There's beautiful, just metallic, really a true gilt dial, handset, everything, and just beautiful. And of course you still do get the red line of text. So I feel like it's just a really nice way of, again, differentiating. Let's say you already own an Oceanking, like myself, to really have something different. And I think putting it on the NATO strap really just brings it to life and makes it take on its own thing, which I really enjoyed. Obviously this is just a loaner, so big thanks to the team over at Monta, Justin, for letting me take a closer look at this piece. And man, this thing is really gorgeous. And then also, if you don't get it on the bracelet, you can save a bit of money, but we'll also talk about the bracelet, of course, in case this is your first Monta Oceanking video you happen to click on. Just kind of broad overview, guys. Of course, you did see the stats go across the screen, but a little bit about Monta. They were founded back in 2015. They're a Swiss-made brand, and basically they're a micro brand startup with their eye on the entry-level luxury market, guys. And yes, these are finished to a luxury level, and they have the fit and the finish. So it's not just a couple of fine bevels, everything. When it comes down to the actual fitment of the piece, the way the machining, the tight tolerances that you'll see, and just the fine execution just to another absolute level when you're picking up a timepiece like this. I mean, honestly, you pick this up and really you wonder why anybody would spend the same amount of money on something like an Oris Aquis. And I have an Aquis and I love it, but guys, this is just in a whole nother league as far as just absolute objective quality, fit, finish, build, complexity. This thing is just absolutely killer. Of course, that would be comparing time models. There are some crazy elevated models that do get pretty intricate from Oris, but I'd say for a standard sports watch in this same price range that is very comparable price-wise, when it comes to quality-wise, Monta really stand out. So this, of course, is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics in design language. When you're looking for a dive watch, you're gonna basically want, of course, some type of water resistance, typically through a screw-down crown. You want something tough, legible, with a dive bezel and a diver's extension, if on bracelet, is always nice. Now, this particular model we're gonna focus on today is this beautiful Oceanking V2, time only, in the gilt finish. Absolutely gorgeous. It has some pretty magic proportions here, guys, at just 40.7 millimeters. It's really only 40 millimeters across the case, but it's actually 40.7 at the bezel. Now, as far as the lug to lug, it's only 49 millimeters, and it does have a fairly flat case, but there are some contouring work that does happen as well. So it actually does fit the wrist really quite nicely, and you'll see that once we get into kind of that side of it. Of course, this is a loaner, so it's going to be a little bit nicked up and whatnot, but as you can see, even from my personal model, it's it's easy to keep this one looking good, because honestly it's almost too nice to wear a lot of the times. And of course, as a YouTuber, I do have quite a few watches in my collection, so I tend to save this guy really for special occasions, and because it's really a special watch. Now, let's see, the thickness is only 11.9 millimeters in height there, so really quite thin. And then as far as the crystal goes, it's a sapphire, it's flat, so there's going to be no distortion at any harsh angles or anything like that. And it's actually quite legible because it actually does have about 7 layers of anti-reflective coating, really making it extremely legible. You can almost feel like you could reach right in and just touch that dial there, because of that. And then also one of the big differences between the gilt and the standard finish here, you're going to see very glossy, and then this has more of a satin tone. I wouldn't call it fully matte because it doesn't tend to have like any type of texturing to it. It's just a smooth, almost eggshell like satin, which I think plays in really nicely, of course, with the gold. Is really quite gorgeous. Now, as far as the bezel goes, guys, this thing, it is an absolute pleasure. This is one of the best 60 click bezels you're ever going to find on anything less than a Tudor. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. Man, there's just no playing there. It's just on its way to the next click and then the click. It's absolutely perfectly dialed in. I love it. And it really goes to show that, with the right design and the right execution, you don't really need to have 120 click bezel. The 120 click bezel actions have become very popularized because it was a way to just cut the slack of a 60-minute bezel in half. And then basically your tolerances would be tighter, just by way of splitting every click in half, shrinking down some of that room for play. Here, 60 full clicks, and man, it's gorgeous. And the nice thing is when you do have it on a strap versus on the bracelet, of course, you do get a little bit more purchase. Even in these gloves here, you can see it was quite easy for me to grasp, but that's also one of the benefits of really any diver when you have it off the bracelet, because now you don't have the end links there, so you're going to be able to grip it even easier. So from a functional standpoint, it's an even more user-friendly, ergonomic action there when you don't have it on the bracelet. Now, the movement inside is considered the Monta automatic caliber M21. So this is actually new for Monta. It used to just be straight up SW300, but now they actually have branded it the M21 because it does enable them to use the ETA 2892 as availability permits. So essentially, they're not trying to say, hey, they have some in-house move or anything like that. It really just gives them the flexibility, like many other brands, to either put in a Salida or an ETA based on availability. They do love that Salida movement. I do as well. But every once in a while you can get a deal on a couple of 2892s, and why not put them in the watch? So that's something that you'll see as far as some of the verbiage and language change on their website. But again, I mean, I really can't tell the difference as I use either of these watches, and they're both actually outstanding movements. Obviously quite similar in architecture, so really no difference there. You're gonna get that 4 hertz sweep, so that's 8 ticks per second. You're gonna still have that 42-hour power reserve. You're gonna have a solid case back that is nicely engraved, very svelte there, so you're not going to have the display or anything like that. But this being that kind of traditional dive model, that is the configuration. And then if you do end up getting one on bracelet, you can get this beautiful clasp here, which actually does have a toolless quick adjust. As you can see here, it's very similar to a glide lock style. Really works really quite well. Big fan. Some people think it's a little bit long, but when I hang it here, you get a little bit of an idea. It is a little bit on the longer side there, guys. So, but it's not like anything obscene. I find it wears really well, but if you have a really small wrist, you might find this portion, the scissor clasps, to be a little bit long. But I enjoy it quite a lot. But one of the things that's one thing you don't have to worry about. And also, it'll save you a little bit of chunk of change, because on the bracelet, it's going to be 1970 US dollars direct, of course, from Monta, and then on you can get it on the rubber only. Of course, the rubber's fantastic, guys. It's these guys, of course, their sister company, their sister brand is Everest. So those are high quality, because obviously they're made for some quite iconic watches, from the Rolex brand, and even expanding now into Panerai as well. So you can get it on strap for $17.45. So you do save a bit of money if you decide to get it on the beautiful rubber strap. And then with the extra money you saved, you can actually buy yourself a nice, pairing of different types of nylon straps as well. And I think that this Mora strap really, of course, brings out the Bond in this timepiece. Now, as far as when you look at the dial, we kind of talked about some of the differences. It's really just you're getting more of a satin versus a gloss finish. But it's still BGW9, still quite clean, still to a certain extent very sterile. It's not something that is going to require special outfits or clothing or anything like that to match. It's extremely versatile layout either way, and then you can actually even get the time only layout in this standard color as well. And the only difference is you would actually get a red seconds hand, so that's a really cool and fun sporty look and take. I personally really enjoy this particular configuration with the 6 o'clock date. I think it brings a lot of symmetry with the 12 o'clock index there, as you can see, where it's a bit larger. So really, really handsomely done, really across all sides. And of course, these are professional grade divers here, being at 300 meters, 304 meters of water resistance, or 1,000 feet. You have 20 millimeter lugs. Of course, you do have this beautiful solid link, solid end link, 3-link style bracelet. Everything's fully articulated, so it's not like 3 pieces of metal stuck together. They're all fully articulated, and there's not a bunch of play in it either. This thing just drapes and wraps beautifully around the wrist. And it does taper nicely down to 16 millimeters for an 18 millimeter clasp here. So really beautiful proportions. Of course, very similar to what you would find from the Rolex Submariner. But I think the dial proportions do make it quite a little bit more modern in the way it feels. You know, you have that beautiful rehaut there that is matched to the dial, which has those beautiful cutouts and nice little slope on there, which pushes the indices and everything out just a little bit, just to give it a more modern feel, a little bit more space, less crowded than you would find on something like your typical Rolex Submariner, which actually I feel it almost blends into that kind of Seamaster-esque territory. So it really beautiful representation of kind of a modern timeless design on a diver. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get these on wrist, just to kind of get an idea of how they wear and how they look. Okay, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears absolutely gorgeous. Get down on a close-up here. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of lens distortion from it being so close. It's going to make it seem a little bit bigger. But what the nice thing is, of course, when you have it on a NATO, it's going to elongate kind of the visual wear on it, which actually keeps it feeling a little bit more balanced, even with a little bit of distortion. And then on the wrist, of course, this thing feels like absolute butter. The nice thing is, with a little bit of extra height you get, if you wear your watches like myself, I wear them a little bit looser towards the end, of course, of the wrist, versus some people wear them kind of above the wrist. You can see here a great example of this, my personal model here on my left hand, which I don't typically wear my watches on because I'm actually left-handed. But as you can see, they both wear absolutely gorgeous. Look at that, guys. Ooh. I don't wear this watch enough, honestly. It's so beautiful, so gorgeous that, you know, I'm honestly probably a little bit too casual at times to be wearing this thing. You know, is it gonna, I can wear it with shorts and stuff, guys. You know, obviously I'm located in San Diego County here in Southern California. So it's, you know, the weather's absolutely gorgeous all the time. But yeah, this thing is almost too dressy. I love it though. I mean, it's absolutely, that's the place it holds in my collection. But the nice thing is here, it just, although, you know, you think of Bond in a white tuxedo jacket, when you see a layout like this, I gotta say, it's actually does give it more of a tool vibe and kind of casualizes it, especially because you got it on the NATOs and whatnot. Man, it just, for me, this is super versatile. I'm totally fine wearing this like this with just a t-shirt and jeans. And I think it just adds so much pop, and it's not like a weird, like, you know, you guys have seen dive watches, right? There's some that are just so bright, so vibrant, and it's cool. They're fun, hip, you know, summertime pieces. But something like this, it just gives you a pop that's so much more versatile and timeless, right? So you're gonna still get the eye catcher when it comes to, wow, there's some depth there, there's some color play, there's a beautiful colorway about it, that it all kind of just comes together on the wrist, and it just is, it's a special experience. And as you guys can see, let me go ahead and show it. It's of course going to ride much flatter when you are wearing it on the bracelet. The bracelet, you know, absolutely gorgeous, the articulation. And then you can see, you know, the clasp lays quite flat. You know, I do have a larger wrist. Actually, I think I probably could loosen this up a little bit. You know what, maybe I'll do that on camera for you guys. So basically, because it is toolless, essentially, I'll just, of course, it's a little awkward with a tripod in front of me, but essentially I'll take a look here, pop this out, give it another go, give me a little bit more length on it, and then I'd clip it closed. And let's see, let me just give it a little shake off camera. Yeah, that's a little bit more comfortable there. But as you can see, look at the finishing work on this thing, guys. Absolutely gorgeous. The brushing is extremely fine. The polish very high, and the breaks in between are just absolutely impeccable. Look at the high polished bevel there. Really quite mirror-like. And then the contrast on that beautiful brush over the top of the lugs. Really gorgeous, very nice organic lines here, as you can see, for the crown guard. And of course they do their job by protecting that beautiful crown that is very nice to actuate. So with that said, let's actually move into some low light transition and loom shots. Alrighty, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, that BGW9 is really quite awesome. One of the trade-offs, though, of course, is you're going to have with the gilt from that side of the house, you know, those obviously aren't going to be lighting up or fully loomed. Me personally, I think it's actually not a big deal as far as the trade-off goes. I think we all have become a little bit spoiled when it comes to looming the bezel insert. And one of the nice things is when you don't have a loomed bezel insert, you really don't have to worry about keeping the bezel as clean. But one thing I do like to do here, oh guys, look at how gorgeous that is already, is low light transition, because your watches aren't always going to be under hot studio lights, or you won't always be in the middle of a field on a summer's day. Sometimes you'll be coming, and most times really, you'll be coming in and out of buildings and whatnot, kind of navigating through less than optimal lighting situations, you know, whether you're in a vehicle or in a building. But as you can see, one of the things that this low light transition does is it actually highlights those imperfections. So when you look at the way the lighting glides over that beautifully uniform brushing, super fine, you're not going to see a bunch of deep machining, almost to a hand level of brush there, just beautifully done. And you can see the transition is still quite readable and quite legible, even in kind of a dusk-like situation. So just the play, the layout, even the indexes and whatnot there are really quite legible still. On, of course, the non-gilt. The gilt, you're going to be relying a little bit more on your light source to catch a little bit of light, so some reflection could come up on it, and you can see the beautiful deep browns and whatnot that can come out of that gold. So really, really gorgeous, man, guys. These are stunners. Even super harsh light like this, you can see as you watch the light dance over some of those polished, high polished accents, and then of course the brushing there across those links. Really, really gorgeous, guys. Absolutely phenomenal. You know, this is one of the best micro brands out there. And you know what? You might not be able to call a micro brand for very much longer, because I feel like there's a little bit of a connotation with that. They're really, I could see these being sold at boutiques. If someone was smart, you know, if you're a shopper at a you know, high-end, you know, women's jewelry, this is the perfect kind of all-around men's sports watch you would be able to stock there, and then you'd give the boyfriends and husbands something to look at and drool over while your wife's checking out some really cool vintage or, you know, reworked, remodeled, just crazy levels of jewelry. If you guys have, you know, significant others in your life that are into jewelry, there's definitely some really high-end boutique stuff that it's not all about the name brand, it's all about the style. And, you know, with watches, I feel like there's always that connotation to always go back to the heritage and whatnot. But when it comes down to the style and just the physical, just the objective specs that you're going to see here, I mean, these watches are pretty unbeatable in my humble opinion. So with all that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do it like. If you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.